What if I told you that saving $10,000 in 1 year had less to do with cutting out coffee and more to do with Cold War policies? That behind every paycheck, every rent check, every grocery bill is a map. This isn't just budgeting. It's economic survival, shaped by history, debt, and decisions you never voted on. I didn't win the lottery, I didn't sell crypto, and I didn't get a raise, but I did save $10,000 in a single year. No tricks, no gurus, no viral hacks. Just choices, sometimes hard ones, informed by a surprising realization. My money wasn't mine. Not really. Because every dollar I earned lived in a system older than me, older than my parents, even older than the credit card industry itself. This is a story about how I saved $10,000 and how history saved me from making the same mistakes everyone else was making. Along the way, I'll show you how American consumers became American debtors, why inflation is less about groceries and more about geopolitics, and how budgeting without historical context is like trying to swim without water. Let me take you back. The year the dollar changed. The year was 1971. Nixon was in office. The Vietnam War was burning holes through the federal budget, and the gold standard, the very backbone of U.S. currency, was about to vanish. I wasn't alive then, but my dollars were. You see, before 1971, every U.S. dollar was, in theory, backed by gold. But on August 15th of that year, President Richard Nixon went on national television and said something that would change the world. We must protect the dollar from the attacks of international speculators. With that, he suspended the convertibility of dollars into gold. In simpler terms, he uncoupled our money from anything real. And just like that, the U.S. entered a new economic era, fiat currency. This matters because the rules changed. Before, money had limits. Gold reserves were finite. But now, money could be printed, borrowed, loaned, all without physical backing. That unleashed a wave of inflation, credit expansion, and policy manipulation that still shapes every paycheck today. Imagine you're a young adult in 1972. Suddenly, your dollar buys less, your rent creeps up, your wages stagnate. Sound familiar? It wasn't just Nixon. The institutions were shifting. The Federal Reserve, once a quiet background actor, became a star. Interest rates would become a tool of politics, and debt would become America's favorite export. And while all that happened, the average American was just trying to buy a house, save for retirement, or pay for college. But the game was rigged, not maliciously, just invisibly. And so the stage was set. But for me, the real story started decades later, with a grocery bill that didn't make sense. The price of convenience. The grocery bill was $142.70. I had bought the same things I always did. Eggs, milk, chicken thighs, a bag of apples, some pasta, coffee beans. But this time, something was different. Not the food. It was the price. It felt heavier. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't just inflation. It was inertia. The kind that builds over decades. The kind that starts with a decision made far away, long ago. Let me explain. After the gold standard collapsed in 1971, the U.S. economy didn't fall apart. It expanded. Fast. Why? Because credit became cheap. For the first time, banks could lend not based on gold in vaults, but on confidence in future income. That confidence, lubricated by debt, became the engine of American growth. The 1980s turbocharged it. Under Reagan, deregulation and supply-side economics reigned. Taxes were cut. Wall Street soared. Household debt doubled. Credit cards, once a niche product for elite travelers, became everyday tools. By 1989, 55% of Americans owned a credit card. By 1996, that number jumped to 67%. By 2008, it was over 75%. At first, it felt like liberation. You could furnish a living room in a weekend. You could fly cross-country and pay later. You could buy a house or two with barely a down payment. But liberation has a price, and that price is called compound interest. Americans didn't become spenders overnight. We were trained, conditioned. Ads told us to live a little. Banks told us we were pre-approved, and the government, it stood back, watching GDP grow. You have to understand, in this new system, spending wasn't just encouraged, it was necessary. The economy depended on it. 2/3 of US GDP is driven by consumer spending. If people stopped swiping, the machine stopped humming. So when I looked at that $142 grocery bill, I wasn't just seeing rising prices. I was seeing the legacy of 40 years of credit-fueled growth. I was seeing how buying became survival, how debt became identity, and I was tired of it. The great shift from saving to spending. My grandfather used to keep cash in a coffee tin above the fridge. He didn't trust banks. He lived through the Great Depression. When I asked him why he never had a credit card, he said something that stayed with me. Debt's just spending tomorrow's peace for today's convenience. He died in 2005. By then, the average American household carried $8,000 in credit card debt. Saving had become unfashionable. We were told it was lazy money, better to invest, to borrow, to scale. But what no one told us was that risk had replaced discipline. In 2007, the housing market imploded. Subprime loans defaulted. Lehman Brothers collapsed. And just like that, the myth unraveled. People lost homes they never really owned. Banks got bailed out, and the Federal Reserve, it printed money. Trillions. This is important, not just as a history lesson, but as a turning point in my own life, because the system that raised me was breaking. And I realized if I wanted to save $10,000 in 1 year, I couldn't just spend less. I had to unlearn everything the economy had taught me. The first shift, reframing enough. The first thing I changed wasn't my spending, it was my expectations. I stopped chasing lifestyle upgrades. I stopped scrolling Amazon when I was bored. I stopped pretending that a $5 latte was a small treat instead of a daily habit costing $1,300 a year. More importantly, I started asking, who benefits when I spend this dollar? And often, the answer wasn't me. It was a dividend check for a corporation, a quarterly earnings report, a marketing campaign. So I built a list. One column said, things I enjoy for free. The other said, things I've been told to enjoy. Guess which list was longer? When I cut cable TV, I saved $1,200. When I canceled 2 unused subscriptions, I saved $360. When I learned to cook 3 basic meals, chicken stir-fry, pasta arrabbiata, and black bean chili, I cut my dining out budget in half. That wasn't frugality. That was liberation. The second shift, paying myself first. I opened a high-yield savings account. Not because the interest rate was great, it wasn't, but because I needed a wall between me and my spending instincts. Every payday, I transferred $470 into that account. Why $407? Because $407 times 24 pay periods equals $10,008. That's it. That was the plan. No apps, no challenges, no envelopes full of cash, just automatic discipline and a refusal to be normal in an economy that punished normal people. Why saving feels impossible. A funny thing happens when you tell people you're trying to save $10,000 in a year. They look at you like you're building a spaceship in your backyard. Must be nice, they say. I could never do that. And I get it, I really do. Because statistically, they're right. According to the Federal Reserve's latest survey, 37% of Americans can't cover a $400 emergency without borrowing. Let that sink in, $400. How did we get here? The answer isn't just people spend too much. It's deeper. It's structural. Let's talk about student loans. I graduated with $32,500 in federal loans, about average for my generation. My monthly payment was $289. Not unmanageable, but always there. Like rent, like taxes, like gravity. I once calculated how much interest I'd pay over 10 years. The answer? $8,741. That's nearly another year of tuition for the privilege of borrowing money I never saw. My parents never dealt with that. When they went to college in the late 1970s, tuition was cheaper, public funding was stronger. Today, student loan debt in the US tops $1.7 trillion. And that's not a typo. It's not just college, it's housing. In 1980, the median US home price was $47,200. By 2023, it was over $416,000. That's a 782% increase, while real wages grew only about 17% in the same period. I rent a 1-bedroom apartment in a mid-sized city. It costs $1,560 a month, more than half my take-home pay. Every time I think about buying, I do the math, and every time, the math laughs back. Living paycheck to paycheck isn't a choice, it's a design. If you think Americans are bad at money, you've missed the point. We're incredible at money. We're productive, innovative, resourceful. But we're swimming against a current built by policy, profit, and history. Consider this. In the 1950s, a single income could support a family, buy a house, send kids to college, and retire with dignity. Today, 2 incomes can barely keep the lights on, and childcare costs more than rent in some states. Why? Because the system evolved, not to support savings, but to extract maximum consumption. Every commercial says buy now. Every app says one click. Every policy says keep the engine running. So when I started saving $470 per paycheck, it wasn't just budgeting, it was resistance. Case study number 1, the teacher with 2 jobs. Meet Melissa. She's a 29-year-old high school teacher in Ohio. She loves her students. She teaches history. How ironic. She also waits tables on weekends. Her salary? $49,000. Her rent? $1,200. Her student loans? $521 a month. She eats lunch in the teacher's lounge and skips dinner twice a week to stretch her groceries. When she told her bank she wanted to start saving for a house, they laughed. Not literally, but you know that corporate chuckle, the one behind polite rejection letters. She's not irresponsible, she's exhausted, and she's the norm, not the exception. Case study number 2, the 401k mirage. Then there's Darren. He's 45, works in tech, makes $120,000 a year, drives a hybrid, owns a condo. On paper, he's fine, above average even. But Darren's 401k is stuck at $48,000. He raided it during the pandemic, used it to pay medical bills when his insurance refused to cover an ER visit. Now he's playing catch-up in a market that rewards timing more than patience. He once told me, "I did everything right, and I'm still behind." That line stuck with me because I felt it too. My own wake-up call. In month 6 of my saving journey, my car broke down. The estimate was $1,800. Old me would have panicked. New me, I paid it in full from the savings account I'd been feeding every payday. And for the first time in years, I felt something rare. Control. Not total control. Life doesn't work like that. But control over my reactions, over my options. And that, more than the money, was what I was truly saving for. The economy wants you broke. Here's a question I started asking myself in month 8 of my saving journey. What if saving isn't hard because I'm weak, but because the system is strong? Strong in keeping me distracted. Strong in making spending feel normal and saving feel strange. Strong in convincing millions of people that poverty is a personal failure, not a policy outcome. That's the part they don't teach you in school, that the economy isn't neutral. It's a story. And the story is written by those who benefit most when you don't read the fine print. Let's talk about consumer psychology. Back in the 1920s, a man named Edward Bernays, the nephew of Sigmund Freud, helped invent modern advertising. He believed that people didn't buy things logically, they bought emotionally. So instead of selling soap, he sold beauty. Instead of selling cigarettes, he sold rebellion. The result? A culture that equates consumption with identity. Don't just own a car, own the freedom to roam. Don't just buy clothes, buy confidence, desirability, status. Fast forward a century, and we've perfected that game. Influencers sell lifestyles, not products. Financial advice on TikTok is sandwiched between ads for luxury water bottles. We are fed debt as empowerment, because if you're spending, you're winning. But here's the catch. That identity is leased. The myth of financial literacy. Whenever people talk about poverty, someone inevitably says, we just need more financial education. And sure, budgeting is important, but let me be clear. You can't spreadsheet your way out of structural inequality. Telling someone earning $36,000 a year to just save more is like telling someone drowning to breathe better. Because the truth is, financial literacy often becomes a smokescreen, a polite way of blaming individuals for collective problems. Let's take the Federal Reserve. Most Americans can't explain what it does, and that's by design. It controls interest rates, prints money, regulates banks. But its meetings are closed, its language opaque, and its consequences profound. In 2020, the Fed injected over $4 trillion into the economy, mostly through asset purchases that inflated stock prices and real estate. The top 10% of Americans, their net worth soared. The bottom 50%, their wages stagnated and their rents rose. Same policy, different reality. What I wasn't supposed to know. Here's something I learned while deep diving into monetary policy. Every dollar I saved lost value over time, not because I spent it, but because the system needed it to. Inflation isn't just a side effect, it's a feature, a slow erosion that forces participation in the marketplace. If dollars held value indefinitely, people would hoard them. So the system gently punishes saving and rewards risk-taking. But what if you don't want to risk? What if you just want safety, predictability, peace? Then you're seen as inefficient, an obstacle to growth. That realization stunned me because it meant my instincts to be careful, to build slowly, to resist impulse were seen as countercultural, and suddenly saving money felt radical, not in a rebellious anarchist way, but in a quiet, subversive way. The architecture of dependence. Did you know that 70% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck? And yet the S&P 500 hit record highs in the same year food banks saw record demand? That's not a coincidence. That's a feedback loop. Low wages, high credit dependence, corporate profit, wage suppression, repeat. And layered over that is a tax system that rewards wealth, not work. Capital gains are taxed less than income. Inheritance is preserved. Debt is subsidized through mortgage interest deductions, while renters get nothing. It's not personal, it's architectural. And unless you understand the blueprint, you're just moving furniture in a house you don't own. My decision: exit the loop. So I made a decision, not to unplug completely. I still live in the world, but to live differently, to consume with awareness, to save with defiance, to see the system, not as a god, but as a machine. And like all machines, it can be hacked, bypassed, or simply refused. That's what my $10,000 became. Not a trophy, not a finish line, but a message, a quiet rebellion against the idea that we must spend to matter. The past may be over, but its shadow is where our money sleeps. I saved $10,000 in 1 year. That sentence feels simple, almost boring, but behind it is a war, not of bullets, but of beliefs. A war between delayed gratification and instant reward, between compound interest and chronic distraction, between the economy they built and the economy I choose to live in. Because here's the truth, this isn't about money. It never was. It's about sovereignty, about saying, my time, my labor, my choices, they are not for sale, not on these terms. History doesn't repeat, but it does echo. The deregulation of the 80s, the financialization of the 2000s, the inflation shocks of the 2020s. Every decade leaves fingerprints on your wallet, even if you don't see them. But now, I do. I see how the architecture of debt was built. I see how culture and policy colluded to shape my impulses. And I see how my resistance, small as it is, matters. Because every dollar I saved was a vote for freedom over frenzy, for patience over panic, for building, not just buying. You won't see that on a billboard, you won't hear it in a commercial, but you'll feel it. The moment you stop playing their game and start building your own. And when you do, you'll know what I mean when I say, I didn't just save $10,000, I reclaimed my future. The past may be over, but its shadow is where our money sleeps. Wake up, and you'll find something no paycheck can buy: clarity.